Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. This morning, my world was turned upside down when my wife spoke words that filled me with dread. I want an open marriage. It's been about 10 hours since then, and I'm still in shock, trying to find clarity in this overwhelming situation. I've been looking for advice, attempting to understand her perspective and figure out how we might navigate these difficult conversations moving forward. I feel completely lost. I'm 34, she's 32, and we've been married for 5 years. We don't have children, and in the 7 years we've been together, she never once mentioned any desire for an open relationship. But today, when she sat me down for a talk that I now realize was the talk, I sensed that something was off. I tried to stay calm and open-minded, but nothing could have prepared me for what she was about to say. When I asked her what had brought this on, she admitted that she'd been feeling this desire for a while. She spoke about connections with several men from her past that she hadn't pursued out of respect for our relationship. Hearing this, seeing her pain, tore my heart apart. My thoughts were scattered, but as I looked at her, her eyes swollen from crying, her cheeks streaked with tears, a part of me wanted to simply hold her and tell her how much I love her. But I didn't. Instead, I sat in silence, listening to her explanations. We were both breaking in our own ways, and the tremor in her voice and hands made it even more unbearable. For a moment, I even wondered if her suffering was deeper than mine. I tried to comfort her, though it felt pointless. Neither of us found any solace. My wife is incredibly beautiful, both inside and out, and I've always known she draws attention from other men. Honestly, I've always felt she was out of my league. If I'm a 5, she's a 10. Jealousy has never been an issue for me. I knew I had to be secure in myself if I wanted to be with someone like her. Over the years, I've watched guys flirt with her, in bars, at concerts, even at her workplace. If I wasn't around, someone would inevitably try to win her over, but it never bothered me. She always turned them down out of respect for me and our marriage. I got used to it. She has a contagious laugh that draws people in, and a warmth that makes falling for her easy. A simple touch from her can mesmerize anyone. But the idea of an open marriage? That was a line I never thought we'd cross. She went on to explain that she felt a lack of variety, especially in our intimate life. She wanted to experience something she apparently couldn't with me, her husband. For the first time in our relationship, I felt small, as though I wasn't enough for her. To give context, she's had significantly more intimate experience than I have, 10 partners to my 3, including group encounters, which I've never tried. Yet despite this, I never considered myself a jealous person. I told her that while the thought of intimacy with other women might appeal to me, it simply wasn't a realistic option for me, with or without her in my life. We've always been open to experimenting, exploring our fantasies together, but it was always just the two of us. So I asked her specifically what she wanted from an open marriage in terms of intimacy. Her answer was vague, aside from mentioning an interest in threesomes with 2 men, which apparently appeals to her. I said I might consider that occasionally, provided we also included another woman. She quickly shifted the conversation to another topic. It's not that my wife is entirely opposed to women, but in all the years we've been together, she's never seemed comfortable with even the simplest displays of affection toward them, not even a friendly kiss on the cheek. Then she dealt another blow. She confessed that she's felt an emptiness inside for a long time, even before we met, and thought that an open marriage might help fill that void. I couldn't understand why she'd never mentioned this before. We've always been open with each other about our dreams, fears, and insecurities. I told her that if she'd brought it up when we were dating, we might have explored it back then. But now, I don't know where we go from here. At this point in my life, I'm truly happy in my marriage. Together, we've built our lives, and I'm determined to maintain that within the boundaries of a monogamous relationship, which we both work hard to sustain. The idea of going back into the dating world doesn't appeal to me in the slightest, and honestly, I've never been good at flirting or charming people. If you're wondering how someone like me, a self-proclaimed bit of a nerd, ended up with such a beautiful woman as my wife, well, that's a story worth telling. It all started one day in a parking lot when I saw a guy harassing her, and things quickly got out of hand. The guy was bigger than me, but I managed to catch him off guard with a punch and a well-timed kick. He ended up behind bars, and I avoided any legal consequences. This incident became the start of our friendship, although the romance between us didn't develop until after I won a major competition. I won't go into too much detail, but the victory had a political significance. As they say, winners attract attention, and that was when our relationship started to change. Early in our marriage, I made it clear that I didn't want to alter the dynamics between us, mainly because it wasn't something I originally expected from our relationship. I told her that she was the love of my life, the woman with whom I wanted to build a family, and that I would do everything to make her happy. Looking back, perhaps I was too candid about my desire to do whatever it took for her happiness, but at that moment, it was the absolute truth. The issue now is that I'm unsure if I can handle the direction she wants to take. I asked her how she envisioned an open marriage, beyond the intimate aspects. Her answer was vague, but she hinted at the possibility of long-term relationships with multiple people. For hours, she kept asking me what I needed to feel comfortable with the idea and what boundaries I'd like to establish. To be honest, I didn't have many answers, mostly because I was too overwhelmed to think clearly. The only thing I could express was that our marriage had to remain the top priority, and that everyone involved must practice safe sex. She's on birth control, and we don't use other contraceptives, but I made it very clear that, under no circumstances, could she get pregnant by another man while we were married. This led to a conversation about starting a family, and that's when she delivered the most devastating blow of the evening. She wanted to explore the idea of an open marriage before even considering children. That became the point of no return for me. Up until that moment, I had been trying my hardest to hold it together, but hearing this made me feel as if everything inside me had collapsed. I felt empty, like a broken vessel with nothing left inside. My wife had never seen me in such a state, and if I could erase one moment from my life, it would be that one. If I had any control over it, I would never let her see me like that again. By the time we were both crying, she was trying to comfort me, assuring me that her love wouldn't change and that she just wanted to postpone starting a family for a while. "It's just physical," she said. She tried to calm me down by holding me, but at that moment, feeling her embrace was too much to bear. I stood up, stunned, and walked away. My mind was in chaos, too many thoughts swirling all at once. I spent the next few hours wandering around the house, waiting for her to fall asleep. Eventually, I ended up in the bathroom, trying to avoid her and constantly replaying everything she had said. When I was sure she was asleep, I quietly left the house and drove to my parents. I needed time and space to think and figure out what to do next. I began researching everything I could find about open relationships. It's been over a month since my wife suggested opening our marriage. Here's where things stand now. In short, I hired a private investigator to find out if my wife had already been cheating on me, but nothing came up. Nevertheless, my trust in her has been deeply shaken. We started attending couples therapy, but after a few sessions, I decided to stop. To put it mildly, I was extremely unhappy with the therapist. Afterward, I found a new therapist with a solid reputation. She charges a lot and has a long wait list, but we finally managed to have our first session. During this session, we mainly discussed our issues. I hadn't planned to share what happened in therapy, but to make the story complete, I'll include some details. A week later, we had a second session, and I already noticed a big difference compared to the first therapist. The new therapist was far more direct. She asked a lot of questions, sometimes addressing us individually and other times together. Unlike the first therapist, who allowed my wife to talk endlessly, this therapist kept the conversation on track. This really helped me better understand the situation. For example, with the first therapist, I had directly asked my wife if she had been unfaithful, or if there was someone specific she had in mind. Instead of answering, she dodged the question and launched into a long, irrelevant story. The therapist ignored my question and focused on how my wife felt unfulfilled, completely disregarding what I'd asked. I was even scolded several times for supposedly not considering her needs enough. When I asked the same question with the new therapist, my wife again tried to evade it. But this time, the therapist intervened and insisted she answer directly. Eventually, I got the answer I was looking for. At first, she spoke vaguely, but in the end, she admitted there were a few men she could approach if we opened our marriage. Specifically, 3 men, all colleagues from work. She quickly added that they worked in different regions and departments. At this moment, she broke down, covering her face with her hands. I sat there watching her cry. Every instinct as a husband screamed at me to go to her, to comfort her, to make her feel safe. Every part of me wanted to reach out, but I couldn't move. In the end, the therapist handed her a tissue. When she wiped her eyes, she glanced at me for a moment, and I couldn't shake the thought that maybe we were both wondering the same thing. Had I stopped loving her? She pulled herself together and continued. She explained that she only sees these men about 4 times a year, and assured me that she had never had private conversations with them. According to her, they didn't even know she was interested. All their interactions took place in group work meetings. I couldn't hold back and asked, why them specifically? Her answer was brutal in its honesty. They're attractive and funny. She also mentioned that she'd heard from other women at work that these men had already been involved in flings. Then she named them. To my surprise, I knew 2 of them and had even spoken to them a few times. Even after all of this, part of me still finds it hard to believe. 2 men I talked to both remarked on how lucky I was to have such an amazing wife. And here I was in therapy, where she admitted she had been fantasizing about them. Sometimes, during our sessions, she would break down in tears. At other times, she seemed emotionally distant. But the essence of her stories remained consistent from the beginning of our journey in therapy. By the time we reached the 3rd session, I had grown used to her descriptions of how brief encounters with men stirred strong emotions and desires within her, ones she struggled to manage. By the 8th story, I barely paid attention, and trust me, there were plenty more stories. Each one followed a familiar pattern. She'd meet an attractive man, whether at a store, bank, or even our favorite cafe. They'd flirt for a few days, and inevitably, the man would ask her out. She always refused, citing our marriage, but would then spend weeks fantasizing about what might have happened had she agreed. I know what you're probably thinking, that it sounds like an addiction. I thought the same thing at first, but after consulting with several therapists, they all reached a different conclusion. Since she never acted on these impulses and showed restraint, they believed she was dealing with something else. It was akin to feelings experienced by teenagers, although most people outgrow it over time. People going through a midlife crisis might experience similar intense fantasies. So either my wife is facing an early midlife crisis, or she's emotionally stuck in an adolescent mentality when it comes to intimacy. Listening to your spouse confess that she wants to sleep with every attractive man she meets, then ask for your blessing. It's not how anyone would imagine Valentine's Day. Our past Valentine's Days were memorable, full of spontaneous adventures. One year, we went skinny dipping on a beach. Another time, we snuck into a dressing room during a formal event for a quick secret rendezvous. Just last year, we rented a private jet, enjoying the entire cabin to ourselves. But this Valentine's Day was different. It was the first since she had suggested the idea of an open marriage. At first glance, the evening seemed ordinary. We had dinner, spent time together, and when we returned home, she initiated intimacy. It was our first physical contact since she brought up the idea of opening our relationship, and it had been the longest we'd gone without intimacy in our entire life together. But honestly, for me, it felt different. There was no passion. I took a few days off and we mostly stayed home, keeping a low profile. During this time, I did a lot of thinking about the past week, about everything she said in therapy, and about where our marriage stands now. I'm still unsure what to do. We're both making sacrifices for our marriage, but ultimately, I'm the one who has to make the tough decision. I believe her when she says she won't ask for a divorce, but she's also made it clear she'll agree if that's what I want. It breaks my heart to see her this way. The woman I fell in love with was full of life, energy, and joy that inspired me. Now, it seems that light has faded, and she's just a shadow of who she used to be. That's the hardest thing to accept. If I truly love her, maybe the best thing I can do is let her go, give her the freedom to be herself, even if it means we have to go our separate ways. At this point, divorce feels inevitable. I don't want to share my wife. That's why I told her, "I'm filing for divorce. I'll never agree to you sleeping with other men," she cried. "But you can't leave me. I need this." "If you need it, then go ahead, but without me. Goodbye." Soon we divorced. I started dating again, and she pursued her fantasies with different men. 2 years later, she was working in a cheap brothel. This is where her fantasies had led her. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. As I sat in silence, the priest's voice filled the hall, honoring the memory of my best friend. But Grayson was more than just a friend to me. I had loved him deeply since those teenage years. And now he was gone, leaving me with so many things I'd never had the chance to say. We first met on my very first day of high school. Grayson was a ranch kid from the outskirts, while I was a city dweller. We'd attended different elementary schools, but since the county had only one high school, we ended up in the same class. By pure chance, we sat next to each other, and I was immediately drawn to his warm smile and rugged looks. Soon we were exchanging notes and stories, beginning a bond that would only grow stronger. In the following months, our connection solidified, and by Thanksgiving, we were nearly inseparable. Neither of us was especially interested in the school sports teams, but Grayson joined the rodeo team, a unique opportunity our school offered. By sophomore year, it was clear he had a natural talent for it. I attended every event, cheering him on with pride. I remember one particular day when he was thrown off a horse no one else dared to ride. Afterwards, I told him no one could have stayed on that horse. He looked at me, grinned, and said, "Charles, there's no horse you can't ride and no cowboy who can't be thrown." That was Grayson, resilient and fearless. When senior year came around, he received several scholarship offers from colleges with rodeo programs, but he declined. The events of September 11th had deeply affected him, and he felt a duty to serve. Despite my urging him otherwise, he enlisted in the Marines right after graduation, leaving our small town behind. While Grayson was serving, I started college, deciding to focus on banking. During breaks, I worked as a teller at the local bank. I wrote to him as often as I could, and he sent back replies, telling me about his life. College brought new experiences, freedoms, and plenty of temptations. At a party one night, I had my first romantic encounter, but I never told Grayson about it. I assumed he was out there, living it up with other Marines. When he finally returned, I was already working as an assistant bank manager and dating a girl I'd met in college. Grayson, on the other hand, was back to his bachelor life, occasionally dating women from our town. Just 6 months after his return, his parents were killed in a tragic car accident. As their only child, Grayson inherited their small ranch, debt-free, except for a $100,000 loan. At the time, he was dating Addison, a secretary at a local law firm. Rumors circulated about her affair with a married lawyer in her office, though whether Grayson knew or chose to ignore it was a mystery to me. Shortly after his parents' passing, the rumors intensified when Grayson and Addison suddenly left town and got married. I was crushed. I had always hoped that someday Grayson and I would find a way to be together. Still, we kept in touch, and I occasionally saw him in town with Addison, whose presence only fueled the gossip about her relationship with the married lawyer. I wrestled with whether to tell Grayson, but I feared he would see it as jealousy or try to dismiss my words. Then, one day, Grayson called with unexpected news. Addison was pregnant. 7 months later, they had a child. He invited me to lunch at a cafe, and I prepared myself to hear what this new chapter of life would bring him. Grayson invited me over to see photos of his newborn, and I agreed, wanting to support my old friend. We had been close for many years, and I still cared about him deeply. But as soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes red and filled with pain. "What's going on, Grayson?" I asked, concerned. "Is everything okay with your wife and the baby?" "No, it's not okay!" he nearly shouted, handing me his phone. On the screen were pictures of his newborn, and it was immediately clear that the baby didn't resemble Grayson at all. "I'm desperate," he said, his voice trembling. "All I can think about is finding this man and making both of them pay for what they've done." "Wait, Grayson." I tried to calm him down. "Don't do anything rash. Let's think this through. When will Addison be discharged?" "Tomorrow," he whispered, struggling to keep his composure. "And has she already seen the baby?" I asked, trying to understand the situation. "She held him, even fed him while I was gone," he replied bitterly. When I asked her, she looked at me like I was out of my mind. She told me I just needed to accept it, that she had been with someone else, and now I would be raising that man's child. He continued, "She plans to come home tomorrow and expects to stay in our house. She even told me that if I want a divorce, I'll have to move out. Since we have a no-fault divorce law here, I'll be required to pay her alimony and child support, since the child was born in our marriage, even though he isn't mine." "How is that fair?" he asked, his voice full of despair. "She's the one who cheated." "Take a breath, Grayson," I advised, trying to help him calm down. "She even joked that I might end up paying for the kids' college someday," he added, his voice growing even more bitter. 18 years of support, and then she wants to sell the ranch and leave me with only half, assuming I'm still around by then. And she laughed as she said it. "Hold on, Grayson," I urged again. "Listen, she's probably been planning this for a long time, likely with some legal guidance. She works at a law firm, and there's one attorney there, a black man. I'd guess he's the father. He's probably advising her on what to say and do." Grayson listened, his anger cooling as I continued. "I'm not a lawyer, but it might be best for you to avoid being alone with her. If she claims you were abusive, it could make things worse for you. She could even have you arrested, giving her an advantage in the divorce. I'd offer you to stay with me, but that could lead to other issues," I added. "Let me make some calls and find a place where you can stay." I was able to arrange something for him, a bank-owned property with a small plot and an old barn. After we had lunch, I returned to the bank, and Grayson went home to pack up. By evening, he had moved to the new place, bringing along his horse. The next morning, when Addison was ready for him to pick her up from the hospital, Grayson instead came to my office. I helped him extend his ranch credit line to $800,000, which he withdrew in cash immediately. He rented a safe deposit box, but we decided to keep the money separate. Addison and the baby returned home by taxi, and her calls to Grayson went unanswered. Meanwhile, Grayson temporarily moved his cattle to a neighbor's pasture and sold them at auction a few days later. Eventually, Addison stopped calling him and filed for divorce. When she was served the papers, Grayson was already settled at his new location. At the first court hearing, Addison was represented by someone from her firm, but not the presumed father. Grayson, on the other hand, didn't appear in person. Instead, he sent one of my close friends, a lawyer from another city, who eagerly took on his case. Grayson was quickly cast as the villain. He had left his wife and their newborn, and the court ordered him to cover all expenses, including her legal fees. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had planned. Right before the first payment to his unfaithful wife was due, Grayson signed up for a charity ride organized by the sheriff. The event was a horseback fundraiser for a cause the sheriff supported. That morning, over 100 participants arrived. About 3 hours into the ride, they reached a river. Recent rains had caused the river to swell, and Grayson suggested the others wait while he crossed first to ensure it was safe. He was halfway across when disaster struck. Grayson's horse suddenly panicked. Some thought a snake might have startled it. Others suggested it could have been a floating log. Whatever the case, Grayson lost his balance and fell into the rushing waters. Later, the sheriff explained that the riverbed drops sharply just past the crossing point, and it was likely Grayson's boots filled with water, leading them to assume he had drowned. His body was never found. It was believed the current had swept him away. The search continued for 3 days before being called off, and Grayson was declared dead. And that brings us to the present. After the funeral, everyone gathered at Grayson's home, Now Addison's home. As is customary, there was an abundance of food on the table. Friends came from all over, even some of his rodeo companions. One person in particular was especially vocal. "That preacher had no idea what he was talking about," he said. "Grayson never fell off a horse in his life. Maybe he got bucked a few times, but just falling off? Nonsense. I'd bet he was shot." Another friend interjected. "Come on, Samuel, that's ridiculous. I was there with the sheriff and 2 deputies. Nobody heard a gunshot." "It doesn't matter," Samuel insisted. "He was the best cowboy I ever knew. To die like that, it's just horrible." "Were you there, Charles?" someone asked. "What do you think?" I shook my head. "I didn't go this year. Had other matters that morning. Shame I wasn't there. Maybe I could have—" The sheriff cut in. "Enough! It all happened so fast. No one could have done anything. We searched, but he just vanished." I took the moment to slip away quietly. 2 days later, Addison and the father of her child stormed into the bank, furious. "What is this?" Addison demanded. "It can't be true that we owe $800,000 on this ranch. That's impossible." I calmly flipped through the documents, found the right one, and handed it to her lawyer, a man named Bob Taylor. He reviewed it for a few moments. "Everything's in order. It appears Grayson took out a loan against the ranch, $800,000, a few days after your child was born." Addison was livid. "How could he do that? The ranch was ours." "No, Addison," I clarified. "The ranch belonged solely to Grayson. His parents left it to him alone. His father originally set up the line of credit against the ranch, using it for cattle operations." Addison's irritation only grew. "Then where's the money?" she demanded. Her lawyer continued. "Did Grayson have any other accounts at this bank?" "Only one," I replied, "and it was a joint account with Addison and Grayson." The balance on her account had dwindled to less than $50, and Addison's patience was running thin. "What about the safety deposit box?" she demanded irritably. "Grayson has one," I replied. "Then open it." "That's where he hid the money," she insisted, her voice sharp and unyielding. I tried to keep my tone steady. "I'll need a court order for that." "Open it right now," she snapped, her anger only growing. "Addison, calm down. Let me handle this," I asked. "Since your divorce wasn't finalized, you were still legally married to him when he died." This reminder seemed to settle her a bit. Addison smirked, stood up, and left. But there was a complication. The judge wouldn't allow access to the box without Grayson's death certificate. Weeks went by, and another notice from the bank arrived, this time with a threat of eviction. Addison returned, now with a lawyer and a court order. I arranged for a locksmith, and together we opened the box. It was entirely empty. Addison was livid. "Where's the money? It couldn't have just disappeared. Can we look at the bank's security footage to see when Grayson took it? Maybe that will explain things." "That's not a problem," I replied, and we carefully reviewed the security footage. It showed Grayson at the teller window, where the teller counted the cash and placed it into 2 zippered bags. Grayson signed, entered the vault with a bank employee, and exited alone a few minutes later, leaving the bank with the bags in hand. So he left with the money. Where did he go after that? Addison asked in frustration, her irritation deepening. "The bank is taking my home. Where am I supposed to live now? It's your child. Find us a place to stay." "Addison, let's calm down," her companion tried, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Don't tell me to calm down," she shot back sharply. "This is all your fault. You promised me a home and land, and now I have nothing left." Her companion tried to take her by the hand to lead her out, but she pulled away. "Let go of me. I'll tell your wife everything," she threatened. But before she could finish, his hand swung and struck her so hard she collapsed to the floor. Without a backward glance, he stepped over her and left. A security guard rushed to help her just as the sheriff arrived, the one I had called when Addison began yelling about losing her home. Her lover was arrested and spent several nights in jail on assault and battery charges. A month later, his wife filed for divorce, and Grayson's house and land were repossessed by the bank. Rumors circulated that Addison had filed for child support from the father of her child and won the case. But shortly afterward, she and her lawyer disappeared from town. The lawyer lost his job and was disbarred for a year. By now, you may have guessed that Grayson was not actually dead. From his perspective, it was all a meticulously crafted plan, a scheme he believed was flawless. What real options did he have? Kill Addison and her lover? No, that was impossible. Pay child support to an unfaithful wife living in his home rent-free? Also no. And pay to support a child who wasn't his? Out of the question. I knew that he took part in an annual charity race, so I decided that would be the perfect time for him to vanish. When they reached the riverbank during the race, he halted the group. "I'll go first to check if it's safe," he announced. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The doorbell's ring jolted me from my focus on the TV. I stood up instinctively, peering through the peephole, feeling my stomach clench at the sight of her standing there. How did she even find me? Part of me wanted to turn away, pretend I hadn't noticed, but I knew she wouldn't leave until she'd said whatever it was she'd come to say. Leaving the security chain in place, I cracked the door open just enough for us to lock eyes. "What are you here for?" I asked. "I need to talk to you." I let out a hollow laugh. Wasn't my disappearing enough of a message that I don't want to see you? That I don't want to talk? She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "You left without any explanation. No note, no reason, just empty spaces where your things used to be." I rolled my eyes. "Are you honestly telling me you don't know why?" She looked down, fidgeting. "I truly don't. If you ever explained, I guess I never understood." Her eyes lifted again, almost pleading. "Can I come in?" Realizing it might be best to get closure, I unlocked the chain and stepped aside. She came in, settling onto the couch and glancing around as if the place were unfamiliar. She asked for a glass of water. As I moved into the kitchen, memories surged back, the night it all unraveled. I'd come home from work to find Rebecca dressed to the nines, as if we had plans. "Are we going somewhere?" I asked, surprised. "No," she replied, brushing her hair back. "I have a date." "A date? With who?" My shock must have been written across my face. "Just a guy from work. You don't know him." "A guy from work?" I pressed, struggling to contain my anger. "Does he even know you're married?" "That doesn't matter. It's nothing serious. I didn't want to go to Scarlett's birthday by myself." The comment cut deep. "So because I won't go, you decided he'd be the next best option?" "You know why I don't want to go," I said, voice steady but tight. "I can't stand Scarlett, and I don't like you hanging around her either." "Get over it, Henry. She's my best friend. She's been there since I was a kid. I'm not about to cut her off just because you don't like her." "It's not about just liking her or not, Rebecca. She's been divorced 4 times, always over cheating. And those parties, they're filled with people high out of their minds. And now, because of her, you're prioritizing this date over us?" She bristled. "Are you saying you don't trust me just because of Scarlett's choices?" "Think about it," I replied, gesturing at her attire. "Look at yourself. You dressed up to impress this friend from work, didn't you?" She shook her head, exasperated. "How could you think that?" "I'm just saying what's obvious. Last time you went to Scarlett's, it was jeans and a sweater. Tonight, you're in a little black dress, like you're trying to be noticed. Scarlett's lifestyle is rubbing off on you and you're starting to give in." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then prove me wrong," I challenged. "Stay here. Don't go." "I can't. Greg's expecting me." At that, something in me broke. "If you walk out tonight, you're walking away from this marriage." She sighed, exasperated. "This is ridiculous. Going out with a friend won't change anything." "Goodbye, Rebecca," I said, my voice cold and final. For a moment she hesitated, as if second-guessing her decision, but then she turned and left. My gut told me I was right. I knew the kind of scenes that played out at Scarlett's parties, and even if Rebecca hadn't indulged, she'd seen enough to be tempted. Scarlett had been pulling her into that lifestyle for years, murmuring, "Come on, Rebecca, he'll never find out." Rebecca would laugh it off, but her laugh sometimes felt hollow, as if part of her was considering it. I tried to pull her away from Scarlett's influence more times than I could count, but breaking that bond was like trying to snap an unbreakable chain bound to her since childhood. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced through conflicting paths, none clear or satisfying. Divorce loomed as one possible escape, but without undeniable proof of betrayal, my thoughts kept circling. Could I learn to accept her coldness? 7 years, mostly good, lay behind us, but always with Scarlett's influence casting a shadow. Maybe you wonder why I hadn't already confronted Rebecca. I needed to know if she'd truly crossed that line. Confronting her outright could push her to be more discreet, leaving me with even less clarity. But if she slipped up at Scarlett's, I had people who would let me know. With no answers, I drifted into restless sleep until the shrill ring of the phone startled me awake. I squinted at the clock. 7 a.m. A knot twisted in my stomach as I reached for the receiver. Hello? Hey, idiot! Did I wake you? Scarlett's voice, sharp as ever, came through the line. What do you want, Scarlett? I muttered. Just thought you'd want a heads up. Your wife's found herself a real man now. What are you saying? I asked, though my stomach had already dropped. Exactly what it sounds like, she sneered. Rebecca's finally with someone who knows what she needs. Here, listen. I froze as muted but unmistakable sounds crackled over the line. Then, clear as day, I heard her voice whisper, Yes, please, harder. I slammed the phone down, but it immediately rang again. Shaken, I let it fall to the floor, unable to bear hearing any more dot. Within an hour, I'd packed essentials, loaded up my truck, and checked into a nearby motel. The straightforwardness of apartment living felt like a blessing. At dawn, I was at the bank as soon as it opened, emptying our joint accounts. Afterward, I went to work, explained the situation to my boss, and quit. He didn't ask questions, just handed me my final paycheck and helped me gather my things. By 7 a.m., my phone was buzzing relentlessly with calls from Rebecca. I finally shut it off, deciding a new number was necessary. But as a final measure, I tossed the phone into a dumpster and picked up a cheap prepaid one. Thankfully, our finances were mostly independent, so I didn't have to worry about her accessing my accounts. By 10 a.m., I was on the road, no destination in mind. I eventually settled down in a distant town, finding steady work and starting over. 2 years passed quietly, with a handful of casual dates. Life was regaining a sense of normalcy, until one day Rebecca showed up at my door. How did you even find me? I demanded. A very costly private investigator, she replied. Why would you go that far? Because we're married. I meant it when I took those vows. For better or worse. Where did you get the money for that? I sold the house, she answered. What house? I asked, caught off guard. The one the court awarded to me, she said simply. I was about to ask about the court proceedings, but it felt irrelevant now. You've wasted your time and money, I said. We're over. You did exactly what I told you would end this marriage when you went to that party. Don't even try to deny it. Scarlett called me in the dead of night and let me hear everything. Your yes, please, harder, was loud and clear. Henry, just let me explain. I didn't go there intending to cheat. It wasn't even a thought. Maybe I dressed up a bit, but that was because Scarlett asked me. She said Greg would leave if he didn't think he had a chance, and she didn't want him around. You expect me to believe that? Please, just listen. Greg got the wrong idea. He wouldn't leave my side, barely letting me talk to anyone else all night. At the gathering, I spent some time dancing with a few men, and that was all. As the night wore on, I began to feel faint and disoriented. Scarlett assumed I might have overindulged and suggested I lie down in one of her guest rooms. I'm unsure exactly when, but at some point I became aware of someone touching me in a way that was far too familiar. For a moment I thought I was at home with you, until an unfamiliar voice whispered, Hurry it up, I'm next. When I opened my eyes, I saw Scarlett there, along with Greg and Mark. A few other men, undressed, were nearby, one waiting his turn. Henry, you know me. You know how deeply I lose myself with you, how completely I surrender to the moment. I don't know how many people were there before everything went black. The next morning, I woke to find Michael beside me, staring at me with an unsettling intensity. Confused, I asked, "What's going on?" He smirked and said, "I never thought you'd cheat on Henry, but I'm glad you did. I'd love to see you again." Horrified, I slapped him, dressed as fast as I could, and went straight to the hospital. At the hospital, I told the staff I suspected I'd been drugged. They tested me and found traces of rohypnol and ecstasy, which led them to call the police. While waiting for them, I tried reaching you, but there was no answer. Later, I understood why when I returned home to find you gone. When the police arrived to question me, I shared what I could remember from that night. Admittedly, not much. Their first step was questioning Michael, who denied any knowledge of my drugging. He claimed such events were typical at Scarlett's parties, assuming I was fully aware. He even suggested he'd thought I had finally chosen to participate. The police then turned to Greg, who, under pressure, implicated Scarlett, saying she was behind the entire setup. Greg said Scarlett believed I secretly wanted to be part of the experience but needed a push. She thought that once the drugs wore off, I'd enjoy it enough to want it again. In a twisted way, she wasn't entirely wrong. There were moments when I felt pleasure. But she ignored the fact that I'd told her over and over that I wouldn't engage in any of this without you by my side. After leaving the hospital and the police station, an officer gave me a ride home. That was when it hit me why I hadn't been able to reach you. I broke down, and for days I could do little but cry. Eventually, I hired a lawyer and filed lawsuits against everyone involved that night. Most cases were dismissed, with everyone echoing Michael's account. However, Scarlett and Greg's roles were undeniable since they'd knowingly orchestrated the entire thing. I won those lawsuits, but Scarlett's assets were minimal, just her house, burdened with $25,000 in debt. I used the settlement from Greg to cover her remaining mortgage and sold her property. With the money from the sale, I hired a private investigator, and that's why I'm here now. You spent time and resources on a PI, just to attempt reconciliation? I want to be with you, Henry. I love you. I belong with you. You would have been better off using that money on a divorce lawyer. You could have filed for abandonment. I don't want a divorce, Henry. What you want is irrelevant to me now, Rebecca. I didn't choose any of this, Henry, but you chose to leave after I'd warned you that leaving would mean the end of our marriage. My departure should have shown you that I meant it. I'm here now to prove that to you. But you're still not listening, Rebecca. I don't want you here. There's no convincing me to come back, because I can't go back to someone capable of what you did. For God's sake, Henry, don't you understand I wasn't in control? I was drugged. You're the one not understanding, Rebecca. This isn't just about what happened at Scarlett's, though I did warn you about that risk. It's about the complete lack of respect you showed before even stepping out that night. Don't be ridiculous, Henry. None of this will change a thing for us. Those were your exact words as you left to meet someone else. In that moment, whatever hope I had for us vanished. Now please, go. I need to prepare for dinner. I'm famished. I'll come to dinner with you, and we'll talk it over. I'm going to show you that you're wrong and that we can work this out. Her voice barely faded before the front door swung open, and an undeniably attractive blonde stepped in, calling out, "Hey, babe, what's for dinner?" She spotted Rebecca and raised an eyebrow. "And who's she?" "This is Rebecca," I answered calmly. "I've mentioned her before." Rebecca's eyes went wide as the blonde moved closer, giving her a warm hug. "Thanks for sending Henry my way," she said, then turned to me with a smile. "What's the plan for dinner?" "I thought we'd eat out. I made a reservation at Carrabba's. Just give me a minute to change." She nodded, smiling at Rebecca. "Nice to meet you, Rebecca. Maybe we'll get together sometime and exchange stories." With that, she headed to the bedroom. "Rebecca, it's time for you to go. I need to get ready." "Does she know you're still married?" Rebecca pressed. "She does," I replied, matter of fact. "Then make sure she knows I'm not giving up on us, Henry. I'm going to fight for this." "Be realistic, Rebecca. To fight for me, you'd actually need to spend time with me, and we both know that's not happening. Get a divorce, find someone else, and when you do, don't treat him like you treated me." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "For God's sake, Henry, why can't you see? I didn't betray you. I was drugged. That doesn't change anything, Rebecca. You had to be there to be drugged. I warned you. Leaving that night would be the end of us. You chose to walk out, and with that, you ended our marriage. It's as simple as that. Now please leave. I won't agree to a divorce, Henry. You'll have to tell your girlfriend that. She'll never marry you. She doesn't need to, I said flatly. She's married just like I am. Her husband won't agree to a divorce, and she won't pay for one. I'm telling you, Rebecca, just let go. I'll leave, she said quietly. But I won't go far. I'll move here if I have to. I'm not giving up on us. No, Rebecca, I've been clear enough. I don't want you back. Now go. She stifled her tears, turned, and walked away. Moments later, Luna reappeared, looking as stunning as ever. Still not ready? Changed your mind? No, I replied with a smile. It just took longer than I thought to send her away. Is she gone for good? Luna asked. She should be. I made it clear I'm done. Good, she replied, smiling. Because I don't plan on letting you go. I smiled back. Give me 10 minutes and I'll be ready. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. They say the truth finds a way to reveal itself, no matter how much you try to bury it. Mila and I have been married for nearly 10 years, and until recently, I was convinced our bond was unbreakable. So when she mentioned a girls' trip to Miami, I didn't question it. She said she needed a break, a few nights away with friends to recharge and let loose. I trusted her completely because secrets had never been a part of our relationship. At least, that's what I believed. The first night I was home alone, flipping through TV channels, attempting to ignore the empty silence that filled the house. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a message to confirm that Mila had arrived safely. Around 9 p.m., it came. Just checked in, babe. The hotel is beautiful. Wish you were here. Love you. I replied, love you too, babe. Have fun. It felt like any other night. Little did I know that this would be the last calm moment I'd experience for a while. Later that evening, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Alexander, a friend from college I hadn't heard from in years. His tone was tense, almost secretive. Daniel, he whispered, as though he didn't want anyone else to hear. Yes, it's me, I responded, surprised. Alexander, it's been forever. What's going on? He paused, and I felt a chill. I'd never heard him sound like this. Daniel, I don't know how to say this, he began, his voice faltering. My heart was already racing. What is it, Alexander? Is everything okay? He drew a deep breath. I saw Mila tonight, here in Miami, he said softly. And she wasn't alone. I felt my blood run cold. What do you mean? I asked, though I could feel what was coming. She was with another guy. They were close, dancing together, touching. I'm sorry, Daniel, but I thought you should know. His words struck like a blow to the gut. Are you certain it was her? I managed to ask, even though in my gut I already knew. I'm sure, Daniel. I saw it with my own eyes, he replied, hesitating before adding, Do you want me to follow her? Yes. The word came out before I could think. Please, let me know if anything else happens. And with that, we ended the call. That night, sleep was impossible. Every notification from my phone sent a jolt through me as I braced for a message from Alexander. By morning, I couldn't bear the waiting anymore. I booked the next available flight to Miami, threw some clothes into a bag, and left, without giving Mila any warning or explanation. I couldn't keep questioning, couldn't keep guessing. I needed to see the truth for myself, undeniable and unfiltered. If Mila wouldn't be honest with me, I'd have to uncover it alone. That afternoon, I arrived in Miami and met Alexander. We found a quiet, dimly lit cafe near the beach to talk. He looked as troubled as I felt. I'm sorry, Daniel, he said as we sat down, but I knew you'd want to know. I nodded, swallowing the growing ache in my throat. Where did you see them? After leaving the club, they headed to a bar on Ocean Drive. His face was tense, a mixture of anger and sorrow. "They were very close, Daniel. Way too close," he said quietly, his voice heavy with something that made my stomach twist. I forced myself to ask, "Did you actually see them kiss?" The question felt thick and bitter in my throat. Alexander looked down, and when he finally met my eyes, his face was a mask of sympathy edged with anger. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I did. This wasn't some accidental touch," he continued, his voice raw. "They were wrapped up in each other like no one else mattered. They didn't even notice me standing there." His words struck me hard, but I could see he wasn't finished. He hesitated, reluctant to deliver the final blow, but he knew I needed to hear it. "Afterward, they left together," he said, his reluctance clear. The words hit me like a punch. The image of Mila, someone I thought I knew deeply, pulling another man toward her hotel room made my blood boil. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my anger in check. "Did they go to her room?" I asked, barely holding my voice steady. Alexander nodded, the disbelief in his eyes mirroring my own. I followed just far enough to see them enter. The door closed, and that was that. Rage bubbled up inside me, leaving me shaking. Alexander placed a hand on my shoulder in silent support. "I just don't understand," I muttered, my voice thick with frustration. "Why would she do this?" Alexander shook his head, as lost as I was. "Only she knows, Daniel," he said. "We agreed to watch and see if she'd meet up with him again. Sure enough, by 8 p.m., there she was, sitting with her friends at a restaurant, and him. They sat at an outdoor table, laughing. She leaned closer, her hand brushing his, and then she kissed him. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, but Alexander grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "Daniel, wait! Are you sure you want to do this now?" But I couldn't hold back. I marched over to the table. Mila's face went pale, her expression like she'd just seen a ghost. "Daniel," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here?" I couldn't hide the sarcasm that laced my words. "Oh, just thought I'd come by and catch my wife cuddling up with someone else, right here in Miami." Her friends were frozen in shock, and the man across from her muttered something before standing and slinking away. "Pathetic," I spat. Mila looked at me, her voice trembling. "Daniel, please, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what I was thinking." "Oh, you don't know?" I shot back, my voice rising with fury. "You flew here just to betray me, and you have no idea what you were thinking?" People around us started watching, but I didn't care. The betrayal boiled within me, uncontainable. "Please, Daniel," she whispered, her hands reaching out, desperation etched in her face. "Let's go somewhere and talk. I can't lose you. I don't want to." I let out a bitter laugh. "Talk?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You weren't interested in talking when you threw everything away, were you?" Tears streamed down her face as she covered it with her hands, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry. Please, just let's go somewhere, just us, and talk it through. I'm begging you." I shook my head, unable to listen, unwilling to forgive. "It's done, Mila," I declared, my voice firm. "Tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer." 9 years of marriage, unraveling in a single moment. As I turned to go, I felt a hand grasp my arm. "Daniel, wait," a gentle voice pleaded. It was one of Mila's friends, Aria, if I remembered correctly. Her expression was a mix of empathy and urgency as she looked at me. "It doesn't have to end like this," she murmured. "Talk to her." Aria had always been kind, maybe even a bit too attentive, but this time was different. It was as though she genuinely understood the turmoil I felt. "There's nothing left to say," I replied, shaking my head. "Mila's already made her choice." Aria hesitated, offering a soft, uncertain smile. "You deserve better, Daniel," she said quietly, her hand giving mine a gentle squeeze before releasing me. I glanced back at Mila one last time. She was crying, surrounded by her friends, but I felt nothing, no sympathy, no remorse, not after what she'd done. The next morning I made the call to my lawyer, initiating the divorce. I decided to linger in Miami for a few days, partly to clear my mind, partly to get a fresh start before returning home. Later that afternoon, Aria messaged me, suggesting we meet up. She thought I could use some company. We met at a beachside bar, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of calm, a chance to breathe freely again. Over drinks, we began talking about everything. Arya confided in me that she, too, had gone through a painful divorce. Her husband had betrayed her with his secretary. She admitted that while she had always been close with Mila, she'd often seen me as the one holding our relationship together. "Honestly, I always felt you deserved more," she said, swirling her drink thoughtfully. "The way you looked at her, like she was your whole world." I sighed, my gaze drifting to the ocean. "I just don't understand why she did it. I wish I could." Arya placed her hand gently over mine. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here. You're the kind of man who deserves someone who truly values what you bring to a relationship," she said softly, meeting my gaze. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, and I realized how close we'd become. Arya was so unlike Mila, confident, resilient, with a spark I hadn't felt in a long time. One thing led to another, and by the end of the night, we ended up in my hotel room. For the first time, I felt a release from the anger and betrayal I'd been carrying. But then, later that night, Mila appeared at my hotel. She looked shattered, eyes swollen, her voice hoarse with desperation. "Daniel, please," she whispered. "Don't do this. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I can't lose you." I shook my head slowly. "You should have thought about that before destroying everything we had." She began to cry harder, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know what I was thinking," she stammered. "I was drunk. It meant nothing." "It doesn't change anything, Mila," I replied coldly. "You made your choice. Now I've made mine." At that moment, Arya stepped out from the bathroom, wearing one of my shirts that barely reached her thighs. She stood there, her gaze steady on Mila, with a mix of pity and quiet determination. Mila's face fell, her shock evident as she took in the scene. Mila's eyes darted between us, her face shifting as the realization took hold. "Daniel, are you too involved?" Her voice trembled with disbelief. I didn't attempt to deny it. "Why does it even matter, Mila? We ended things. Remember?" Her face contorted, the sorrow morphing into rage. "You've known her forever. She was my friend, Daniel. How could you betray me like this?" I gave a harsh laugh. "Are you seriously accusing me after everything you put me through?" Arya stepped forward, her gaze steady. "Maybe it's time you admit the truth, Mila. You shattered his heart, and someone had to help him piece it back together." Mila's face twisted with anger, a strangled cry escaping her before she lunged at Arya, clutching her hair in a furious grip. "With my husband? You heartless traitor!" she screamed, her voice cracking with pain. "You were my friend! How could you do this to me?" Arya gasped, recoiling from the pain. But before Mila could do more, I stepped between them, grabbing her arm to hold her back. "That's enough," I said firmly, keeping her at arm's length. "Leave, Mila. I don't want to see you here again." Her anger faltered, leaving behind a look of fragile despair as her eyes filled with fresh tears. She staggered toward the door, her sobs filling the silence. With a final wounded look in my direction, she left, slamming the door behind her. I felt no remorse. For the first time since Alexander's call, I felt a sense of release. 6 months later, our divorce was finalized. Arya stood by my side, and the irony wasn't lost on me. The very woman Mila had trusted was the one who had shown me what I'd been missing. Together, Arya and I moved to a new city, away from the ghosts of our past, and eventually, we married. The ceremony was small and personal, with only our closest friends and family, just the way I wanted. We began building a life together, and for the first time, I understood what genuine love and trust felt like. As for Mila, I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce was settled. I'd heard she started dating again, but her relationships didn't seem to last. She kept ending things, but honestly, it was no longer my concern. I had Arya, and that was all that mattered. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.